Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies for July 25th, 2021. It is our spring, summerish season finale. We are going to take a little break here in August and be back in September with a whole new set of This Week in Indies, and then we go all the way to the end of the year. So I'm real excited about that, but I'm real excited for the break. I've been reading a lot lately, and there's something to be said for giving yourself a break a little bit. I think everybody deserves one, and you should take one every now and again. But that being said, we still have a great show ahead for you. We've got a look at we're going to be doing another double feature today, and we've got a special sneak preview of that if you stick around for us at the end there. And we also, of course, always have the Indie Connection. It's going to be a doozy for the last one of this cycle, so we're excited about that. I don't really have anything to start with, so why don't we just go right to it? Here we go. It's our roundtable discussion. And as you can see, I've kind of changed the background a little bit. And the reason being is because I have an incredible group of folks joining me. Look at this. The roundtable of amazing authors, fantasy, and the like. We're going to get into a little bit about that. I know we've had shows about this before, but I have some ways that we can approach it a little bit differently. That being said, let's go around the horn and see who's here. So, Mr. Lahr, why don't you start us off?
Good morning. I'm Ron Lahr. I write humorous stuff, whether it's straight humor, fantasy, or science fiction. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. All right, Madeline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Dale. I write a mix of fantasy, romance, and paranormal. And I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
For being here. I appreciate it. All right, Mark.
My name is Mark Stallings. I write science fiction and Asian fantasy in the genre of wuxia, which is magic-powered martial arts.
Awesome. That's going to be fun to talk about. All right, and joining us here, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hello. I'm Melissa Sell. I write fantasy, horror fantasy, paranormal fantasy. Lots of fantasy.
Okay. Awesome. That's the cool thing about this particular group here. We all dabble in a kind of a different way in fantasy, which I think is really telling about the genre, but more so it's interesting that we all approach it differently. A lot of that stems from what you like and who you've grown up with and what you've done. And I'm kind of curious to start off the conversation. What really drew you to fantasy? What is it about the type of fantasy that you write? Where did that stem from? Where did that love come from?
I'm going to say it's a God complex. I can create everything, control everything, kill who I want with, no issue. Nobody's going to come arrest me because I killed that fairy over there. So, I'm going to say it's that. You create your entire world and you have complete control over it. So, and you don't have to be that accurate and look up too much history for it. You can just make everything up as you go.
I have to agree with that. Like, that it's fun. You get to somewhat control your characters. Sometimes the characters control you, and they just take you into this world you've created and go with it. So,
all right.
Mine was first I read Lord of the Rings, loved that. But then as a short, skinny, glasses-wearing guy, I naturally played Dungeons & Dragons, and that solidified it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of escapism aspect of it. You've got the everyman trope where, that's us, right? You kind of completely envision yourself as that person who gets powers and then now starts to shape the world they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Where did the martial arts aspect come in for you, Mark? Were you studying long before you were writing?
Yes. So, I grew up on Shaolin theater, kung fu movies every Sunday. And then when I went off to college, I was 18, went to Colorado State University, and they had an Aikido organization there. So that was actually the first martial art I started doing. And then from there, it was Shotokan karate, competed nationally, and then getting into more of the Chinese martial arts because, Shotokan's really rough on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted something that I could do when I was a little old man. And I went into Chen style Tai Chi, which is the actual martial art aspect of the Tai Chi. And from there, getting into Bagua and Xing Yi. And so the book that I am working on, the series, its fundamental magic process is Xing Yi. So I completely plagiarized a Chinese martial art with the intent that if I have readers that want to know more, all they have to do is go find the local Xing Yi school and they can be learning.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's neat. And Melissa, you write horror fantasy, so, and you mentioned about you can kill without consequence.
Yeah.
Is it more the killing aspect more along the lines of the horror, or is it more along the lines of fantasy, or you kind of mix the both?
It's about a mix of both, I think. I mean, I'm not going to say that the deaths aren't horrific. So there's a lot more to it. It's not like, oh, I got stabbed. It's more like there's my guts over there and my head's over there kind of stuff. So
are you a horror fan? Do you like horror?
I like horror. I never really wrote horror until much later. I actually wrote my first horror story about 2 years ago. And then so one of my trilogies that's being re-released, I actually added horror to it. I made it darker than it was before. So, and that was fun. I liked it. I don't know what that, I probably need therapy, but it was pretty good. I liked it. It was more fun for me.
Dark fantasy is like the best. So I'm writing a book that's dark fantasy right now, and I'm like, man, this is a little like I don't know if I should put should I warn people? But I'm like, oh no, it's dark fantasy. They're gonna know it's bad.
Is it more cathartic than you thought it would be?
Yes, it is. Because I'm like, oh, this person made me mad today. It gives me a little bit of fuel to make like a good fight scene where like blood is going everywhere. So
if you get the right soundtrack to it too, it's just
the right song, and you're just like, oh.
And Ron, you gravitate toward the humor aspect of things. I mean, I'd hate to say, where does humor come from? Where does your humor come from? Because we can all naturally tell where it comes from. It's you. You're a funny guy. But was that something when you thought about writing? I'm curious. Was that something you knew you were going to incorporate, or did it just naturally happen for you?
Well, both. When I originally started writing, it was all supposed to be funny, but I was a kid, so I don't know how funny it was. But then I wrote my first novel, straight epic fantasy, and I got to the end of it, and while I love the story, I didn't love the book. And then when I rewrote it, switching it to first person with a smartass narrator, man, I loved it a lot. I mean, from the first day. And so, for me, I write what I like. So nice. Now I'm just stuck. I don't see me writing anything particularly serious without a lot of humor in it.
Yeah, was it important for all of you to kind of stay in a fantastical realm? I mean, is part of the idea of it being fantasy is that it's a built world that you're building around? I mean, I'm kind of curious, for the foundation of fantasy, where if that is really where it roots for you, or is it more of the story fits the genre for you?
I'd say my story fits the genre because my Face Shifters is more kind of urban fantasy and actually takes place in like Oklahoma and like surrounding states. But it's also got like portals and stuff that go into Fey realms and different like types of like demon realms and stuff, which is going to be happening later in the series.
Is that something you explored right away, or is that something it came with after telling the story?
It kind of started coming in after I started telling the story. This one is where like the main character kind of hijacked it, and it was like, oh, this is where we're going. Okay, we can definitely go with that. So
Nice.
That's pretty much the same for me too.
Yeah, and I was about to say, it's a similar thing. Yeah, the character's driving, and it's me being able to push the wonder into this character as they get to see new things and explore new areas of the continent that they're on, or traveling through. Like I have portals too, for instances, and being able to go experience different things that normal people just can't, and just it's literally that sense of wonder.
My world can't afford portals, but I developed the world first, knowing I wanted to write fantasy. I spent a lot of time world building, and then that led to the story, and so there you go.
Nice. How much? This always comes up. This is always something that a lot of people always ask, and how much of your world building does it really make into the story? But I'm more curious, how detailed are you about it? Are you really, really detailing your world building process as much as you're writing your story, or are you concentrating on just what might fill the story or keep the story alive?
Well, I have a complete. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have like a complete notebook of nothing but the world, but not everything makes it in. It's like, I know the layout of my entire house, but I'm only going to show you the clean parts. Okay. So, this corner over here is nice and tidy and it's dusted, but that's what's going to make it to TikTok. Not all the toys over here. So I know all of it, but only some of it's going to make it in. I have more because the series it's a trilogy, but there's a little bit here and a little bit in the next one, a little bit more in the last one, but I don't want a whole information dump. So, let the reader fill in a few things. But, if anybody ever has questions like, hey, where's the porta potty over here? Oh, well, it's back there behind that tree. So,
That would probably have been my first question going into your house. But no, I'm curious too, Melissa, that, in terms of, it was a lot of what you, I know a lot of what you reveal has to do with the story, but a lot of what you created and thought about and put into this world binder or world that you built, how much of it is relevant to the story you're telling, and how much of it do you want to be relevant to the story you're telling?
Not all of it is. I'd say probably about 75% is relevant.
Mine's much less. Like, I have so much stuff that I've created. I mean, ridiculous things, like lists of who was the leader of a city for how many years. And so, we're talking like 5% of the information I have about the world is relevant or makes it into the stories. But I have taken certain things that I like about the world and made a short story out of it. So.
Well, and that's the dangerous game, right? You want to make sure that you're doing enough world building that you're creating a rich tapestry, but not so much world building that you're like Melissa said, where you're just raw info dumping. So I have like intricate backgrounds on secondary characters, which the background itself won't directly go into the story. It does color how I perceive that character interacting with others, and you can drop little hints, like that time where I was a pirate hunter. Yeah, never mind. We won't go into that. And then your other characters can be like, wait a minute, hang on, pirate hunter. Yeah, that kind of a thing. Especially when you're talking to grandma.
Right? Nice. How about for you, Melissa?
Mine.
Madeline, sorry.
I was like,
Sorry.
I'm done. My world building
It's early
is
for
definitely.
me. I apologize.
You're good. It is really early for you on yours. It's almost lunchtime here. My world is definitely like I do a lot of back building that doesn't go into the story. Just like Mark said, like with characters. Sorry, I don't know why I've got a pencil. I actually have like 3 or 4 characters. Like I'm like, okay, I have a backstory. And I'm like partially written it out. I'm like, do I want to make this where like readers can look back into it? Do they have enough interest in these characters? But like there's things like one character I have, she's a female Fae warrior, and like all this stuff happened in her past that she's helping with now, and she's hinted at it, like, but there's not a whole like random tangent. We're gonna go over here and talk about this girl, but we're gonna come back to the story. So I try to keep it all in line and moving the story forward, but still keeping the world building going.
All right. So this is more of a selfish question for myself, because if anybody who knows, who's been watching or knows me, knows I've had an aversion to fantasy for a long time, reading it, writing it, all of these things. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, came this idea that I had. And now I'm writing a 6-book epic fantasy series. So as a new fantasy writer, what I'm discovering is I've shared a lot of the concept of what I want and what I'm doing with a lot of people to kind of take a look at and give me feedback on. And what I've discovered is that they're asking a bunch of questions that I actually have the answers to, but I didn't write it in there, right? And so people are finding different questions for things that, I would have never thought would have been relevant to the plot or the story itself, but I know the answer to. Is that something that happens a lot for you all when you're world building? Is that part of the reason why you are kind of intricate, so you can answer those questions that fans have or readers have that maybe aren't existing? Because I'm sure you've gotten some weird ones.
Well,
That's not why
absolutely.
I do it. I do it because I'm messed up.
No.
Well, yeah.
You do it because you want to create that rich world. And,
Yeah.
And when you have characters that are interacting with the world, like I had, because I posted my first novel up on Royal Road, and so I got some deep interaction with some of the readers. And one of the guys was talking to me about the distance a normal person could go in an agrarian society. I mean, we got into this and it's like, okay, dude.
Oh my.
Yes, the School of Magic is 4 days by wagon away from their village, and they've never been there because most people won't walk 4 days away from a village without a reason. Hey, let's go that way.
They got some really good coffee. I'll do it.
Yes, I've mapped out and I figured out where in the world this thing is, and it's there for a reason. And no, people don't normally just show up. Hey, look, I'm going to go. Today we're going to go to actually it'd be this week. We're going to go visit the School of Magic for no purpose.
Did you feel something though that you had this nice response ready for him that you could answer his question? Was that something
I did do when I'm trying to figure out, because when I was writing, I wanted to figure out, okay, how many nights does it of sleep? They're going to have to stop how many times during this trip, because I have to write that for the reader, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do a wagon trip, and it's like, okay, day 40. I fed the horses. I watered them. I brushed them again. Man, horses take a lot of work. No, you don't get into all that, but you have to figure out, okay, how far can a wagon go in a day, and then how far do I want it to be away? Yeah. But yeah, you want to weave nuggets in for quick readers to kind of wonder about the world. Mm-hmm. But don't put stuff in there just to argue with them.
Is part of your Easter egging process with those intricate details too? Do you use the Easter eggs sometimes for that, or is it just is that more recalling?
Well, especially if you're doing a series, right? You want to have an Easter egg in book 1 where you throw a nugget of information, like Grandma being a pirate hunter.
Right.
And you're going to kind of address that at the end of book 2.
Yeah.
Where she actually shoots the pirate or whatever you're going to, your thing's going to be. But then what happens is when you start weaving these Easter eggs in, and you're later on in the series, and then people go back and they're rereading. They're like, "Oh, I see that and that," and then you look smarter than what you actually are.
Mhm.
Yeah, nice.
The hard
Yeah.
part's keeping track of all that too.
Right.
Yes.
I was thinking sometimes it happens by accident for me when I'm writing it. I'm like, I go back through with my editing process. Like, oh, I totally hit it. It's here. Yes, go me.
Is that it becomes natural to weave it in there then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes you just can't help it. Like I
Yeah.
said, I do like intricate backgrounds, or Ron has the history of the rulers of this city, and you can throw in one little nugget here, and it's just percolating in your subconscious, and it's just the way that bit of information, well, Eldrad the Elder, well, he built the grain mill, and he spent a lot of money on it. Maybe there's something more to this grain mill we should go check out.
How about that, Ron? Are we about to take a trip to the Great Mill?
Yes, that sounds like an excellent short story. I'll use it as my reader magnet. But it is fun for me when I go back through, and I started it a long time ago, so I do have a physical gigantic binder as well as all the files on my computer. But when I'll go back through the binder and read something and be like, what the hell is that? I mean, why? How did that even? I mean, I will just be shocked at what I decided was a part of this world. But it's canon, so I can't do anything about it.
It's the late night scribbling for me. When you write stuff and you're like, hey, this would be good, and then you can't read what the hell you wrote. But somehow it still makes it in a story. So subconscious. But I have big physical notebooks and stuff too. So everybody has a backstory. And I'd make a great FBI agent because I have so many details on everybody. I mean, they're all fantasy people, but still. There's a realm somewhere with these same people. I'm sure. Parallel universe.
Have you ever killed somebody just because you don't want to keep their details anymore?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm tired of knowing that this guy's a pirate hunter. Just die already, I'm not spoiling anything for anybody who hasn't read Mark's stuff. I just made that up on the fly.
I don't have a grandma and a pirate hunter. Well, actually, there is a grandma.
Darn.
I was
Definitely not a
about to say,
pirate
dang it.
No, she actually protected caravans, but that's a different story.
Well, that's interesting too. Wait a minute. Let's explore that too.
It's the details that matter, right? In fantasy, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what sells it, right? It's what people gravitate toward. And like we said, Mark mentioned the conversation that he had that probably, Mark, you never thought you would ever have, right?
Never thought that would be relevant.
Yeah, and it's just funny how people gravitate toward those certain things and aspects. And I was finding that very interesting when people were asking me questions about just this little 6-paragraph concept that I made and how detailed people were getting about it. And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, well, you really want me to tell you that? Because that's kind of a spoiler, That's the other thing is like you got to do the dance a little bit too, because some of the things that people come up with, yes, you're right, but you're going to spoil it for yourself if you keep going this direction. Ooh, somebody has Looney Tunes on it, huh? Nice.
I was like,
I thought that was a signal that the segment was over.
I was like,
Now on to.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Well,
no worries.
we're all a little crazy over here in Looney Tunes, so
No problem.
Welcome to my realm.
So I mean, is that a dance that you've done quite often, where you like, look, I want to tell you stuff, I want to talk to you about it, but how far have you gotten? Because I don't want to spoil anything for you, kind of idea. People are smart. I think, especially if they intricately know fantasy quite well, they'll pick things up pretty fast too, I think, which is kind of interesting. But I don't find that with many other genres, like crime readers.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they're stupid or they're not with it, but man, I'm like, did you not read the book? Because like 10 pages ago, I told you exactly what your question was, and it's like, all right, but it's like with fantasy readers, they're like 3 steps, and I'm thinking that's the Dungeons and Dragons, the chess, the more the more involved games that they've played as children, or seen, or maybe they're just fantasy lovers and they know how it goes, and we all kind of want to stay in that realm. But as readers yourselves, do you find yourself stepping ahead a little bit too? Do you guys?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's fan theories too. A lot of fantasy readers they have big fan theories, and they're looking for that next one. Boy, they're just wanting to especially like with Harry Potter, to bring up Harry Potter, because there's so many out there and they all make sense, but they can't all be true. So, but I like all the fan fiction and everything. All the fantasy readers are just really into the fan theory, and I actually like some of their versions better. It's actually like, oh, I never thought of that. Shit. Okay.
I was.
My wife. Oh,
go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, my wife is really good at guessing what's going to happen in a book or a TV show or a movie right away, and it's very annoying.
Yeah.
Because I want to experience whatever it is, so I purposefully try not to figure anything out. I want to experience it organically and be surprised. And she's just a jerk.
I've had that experience myself, because a lot of people go to the movies the first time with me, and I always tell them, after the first time, you'll never want to go to the movie with me again. I promise you. I guarantee it. It will happen. And they're like, no, it's fine. It's fine. I've been with people who've spoiled stuff before. It's all right.
You're the guy who leans over and goes, so this is what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I am. I've been challenged too, and people do that to me a lot. So I can tell a quick story. When I was in the Marines in Okinawa. One of the things that everybody could do on a Friday night, because we were locked down on our base, we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go out in town. So one of the things that we could do is go to the movie theater, because they have a big movie theater there, and the movie Seven was on, and it was a packed house. It was and there was a moment, and if you haven't seen Seven, I'm sorry, I'm about to spoil it for you, but there's a moment where at the end of the movie something happens and something gets revealed. And
what's in the box? What's in the box?
And as soon as the car goes across the desert, I go, oh, that's her fucking head, really loud. And everybody, when it happened, was like, oh, you suck, and it was just like, I knew it. I just had that instinct. It was like, and I said it out loud, which you should never do.
I have two comments about that. One is, how are you not dead? And,
exactly.
And two, you are right. I never ever want to go to a movie with you.
Yes.
I'm with Ron. I like to experience the show, but
I've had to learn that.
But recently, I've been trying to fill in the gaps with stories that I've never read, and so a friend of mine turned me on to Elizabeth Moon's Deeds of Paxenarian.
Ooh.
And so I'm going through book 3. And it's exactly like what you said, Joe. Something happens, and you're like, I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I know who, I know why, I know what happened, and I'm like a 10% of the book in, and so I got 90% to watch everything that I just predicted, and I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. It's like, oh, I just solved this puzzle.
That's a bummer.
How about as writers? You already know what's going to happen. Is that a different experience in that respect then, because you're writing it, or have you ever changed something because you go, oh, you know what, I think this is going to be too predictable for people?
Mm-hmm. I have, yeah.
I don't. I'm a plotter. I'm a hardcore plotter. I follow the outline. I do surprising things in the outline, like I'd mentioned. My first book, I all of a sudden killed a character, and the editor was like, "What happened? Who told you to do that?" It just happened organically. I'm sorry. So like with the second book, I'm doing it more as a whodunit.
Nice.
Except for I'm trying to weave in just enough clues for them to think they know who did it. And I have a big red herring guy that I'm trying to set up to be the fall guy who didn't do it. Sorry, spoiler.
Who is that?
It is Steve
it's the grandma.
Unconquerable.
It's the grandma pirate hunter.
He didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to I am starting another email list that's just for humor, not fantasy, and I had this roto reader magnet, and I gave it to one of my readers to take a look at and see what he said. And when his feedback was, I thought all these things were going to happen, and none of them did, and I loved that.
Yeah.
And I took that as a great compliment.
That's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a rarity that happens, right? And it's like that's like that's like a 5-star review right there. That's like, oh yes, even if it's not a 5-star review, it feels like it, right?
As soon as I heard that, I retired.
Stopped writing right there. I haven't written a word since.
Yeah, I'm done. I did it.
How about for you, Madeline? What do you think? Are you somebody who changes on the fly, or do you stay the course no matter even if it's predictable?
I definitely am one that changes like on the fly because I kind of plan. It's like a loose plan. But the last book I published, I wrote out the ending, and I was like, no, this doesn't have as much like shock factor. Like I need to have something bigger. And then the second thing I wrote out was like, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Like, what did I just do? So, and like, I've only had a few people be like, holy crap, you did what? You did this? Like, why did you do this? And I'm like, but it just, it needed it. So, because I felt like it really boosted the story forward, because after that book, like the series is taking a big shift. And I feel like it really sets it up for that.
That kind of brought up a question for me, and what you said, Mark, when you killed the character early on, has people who've gone beyond that point kind of come back at you and said, oh, that made sense why you did that? Or has it been the opposite?
Well, the character that I didn't plan on killing, it was for the emotional stakes. I mean, I needed the main characters. There's a trio of them. I needed them to feel that this is real.
Yeah.
Having someone close to them being killed, it was in horrible combat. The school was attacked, and he was valorous in his death. But the fact that this person that they just had a meal with, who was like a big brother, is gone.
Yeah.
And it just like, I needed them to understand that they could die. I mean, this is not a nice place.
Nice. How about for you, Melissa, who creates horror and people are going to die? Do you have you changed who dies before, and have you saved some people before?
I've had characters beg to stay alive, but I mean, sometimes you just got to make a sacrifice for everybody else. But there's some like the trilogy that I have, it's remastered. So I've brought a couple of people back, and some are staying, and then some new people are leaving. So sorry, but it's for the greater good.
Do your fans forgive you for that?
No, but I mean, did you hate the story? No. Are you going to keep reading? Yes. You'll be all right.
I like killing characters off, and I trace that back to my general dislike of people. So
it does make it easier. Yeah.
Do characters die humorously though? Have you?
No. All right. Well, so in the fantasy novel, it's an epic fantasy. It's just delivered in a humorous manner, but it is serious fantasy. It's not like a goofy type of humor.
Right.
My science fiction book that's coming out later this year, You Get What You Steal, that is pretty goofy, and people die in some funny ways. So depends on what you're reading. You have to read my entire body of work to anyway.
If that is not an endorsement, I don't know what is. But that's the greatest seller. That's the greatest sell I've ever heard. You have to read everything to get the whole context of what I'm talking about right now.
Otherwise, you're an idiot.
You do have some good deaths in your book, though. Like, there's some some funny ones too. So, and like the post-death scenes with Dirk, like.
That's very kind.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm gonna, because I do have something that I want to share with everybody, and that is a special sneak preview of the show that's coming up after this. and that has a question in it that I think would be relevant to this group here. So I'll play that a little bit, and we'll end on that question. So I'm going to jump ahead right now, and it would have been perfect if the Looney Tunes came on right now, because we are going to jump into a different segment, and I'm going to give you all the last Indie Connection of the year. Well, not of the year, of the season, and then we'll be back, and we'll talk a little bit more, and I will give you that little sneak preview, and then ask the panel what they think about the question that I asked Miss Blanchard. All right, so here's the Indie Connection, and we'll be right back.
Hey guys, Jacquelyn here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Guida Terlice's Enchante. The first book I have for you is called Between Ink and Shadows by Melissa Wright. She'll win back her freedom, even if she has to steal it. Damona Weston has a debt to pay. Her father's dealings with a dark society known as the Trust cost Nim her freedom. There's one way out of the contract on her life, and that's to bide her time and pay the tithes. But when the Trust assigns Nim to a task in the king's own castle, her freedom is not the only thing she'll risk. Warwick Spencer has a secret. As King Senential, he should be the last soul in Inara to risk association with dark magic. But long-hidden ties to the Trust are harder to shed than simply cutting the threads. When the Trust sends a thief to his rooms, Warwick thinks he's finally found a way to be rid of them for good, but Damona Weston is hiding secrets of her own. The second book I have for you is called The Fire in the Glass by Jacquelyn Benson. London, 1914. Lily's visions could stop a killer, if she'll trust a reclusive aristocrat with her darkest secret. A monster stalks the gaslit streets of Edwardian London, draining the blood of the city's mediums. Lily Albright knows who's next. Lily is plagued by visions of the future she can never change. When a mysterious fiend threatens someone she loves, she determines this time will be different. But she can't do it alone. To save a life, Lily must reveal her darkest secrets to someone she has little reason to trust. The reclusive Lord Strangford, a man haunted by his own unusual powers. From the glittering galleries of Bond Street to the rookeries of Southwark, Lily and Strangford plunge into a dark conspiracy that lies at the heart of England's rising eugenics movement. To thwart it, Lily must face a past rifled with betrayal and embrace the power she has spent her entire life trying to escape. The third book I have for you is called The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. And I have to say I have read this book and absolutely loved it. It's a duology and you should really check out both books. But here is the description. A warrior princess trained in isolation, Laura is driven by two certainties. The first is that King Aaron of the Bridge Kingdom is her enemy, and the second is that she'll be the one to bring him to his knees. The only route through a storm-ravaged world, the Bridge Kingdom, enriches itself and deprives its rivals, including Laura's homeland. So when she's sent as a bride under the guise of peace, Laura is prepared to do whatever it takes to fracture its impenetrable defenses and the defenses of its king. Yet as she infiltrates her new home and gains a deeper understanding of the war to possess the bridge, Laura begins to question whether she's the hero or the villain. And as her feelings for Aaron transform from frosty hostility to fierce passion, Laura must choose which kingdom she'll save and which kingdom she'll destroy. And the last book I have for you is called Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. A former slave fighting for justice, a reclusive warrior who no longer believes it exists, and a dark magic that will entangle their fates. Ripped from a forgotten homeland as a child, Tisana learned how to survive with nothing but a sharp wit and a touch of magic. But the night she tries to buy her freedom, she barely escapes with her life. Desperate to save the best friend she left behind, Tisana journeys to the Orders, the most powerful organizations of magic wielders in the world. But to join their ranks, she must complete an apprenticeship with Maxentarius Farlalone, a handsome and reclusive fire wielder who despises the Orders. The Order's intentions are cryptic, and Tisana must prove herself under the threat of looming war. But even more dangerous are her growing feelings for Maxentarius.
The bloody past he wants to forget may be the key to her future, or the downfall of them both. But Tizana will stop at nothing to save those she abandoned, even if it means gambling in the Order's deadly games, even if it means sacrificing her heart, even if it means wielding death itself.
Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on The New Connection. Bye!
Well, actually, you won't see her next week. It will be September 7th or 8th. I can't remember which day it was. But that's the next Indie Connection. But for this season, I really appreciate everything that CL Cannon has provided us. Go back and watch the archives. You can also go to YouTube and check out her. She posts all the Indie Connections after she brings them here. So we really appreciate that. We're the first to get those and put those out there. It's another wonderful connection here this week, and go check out those books. As I would say, go check out everybody here. Everybody's links is everywhere, and we'll give them an opportunity to tell you where you can go directly to find them as well here in a little bit. Before I get to the question that I asked Kelly, that I'm going to reveal too, I am curious in terms of in writing fantasy nowadays. Back in the day, fantasy was very much, certain things. There was, the hero's quest, there was the journeys, there was tropes, but there was also a very rigid, defined genre in a lot of respects. If you went too far this way, you were sci-fi. If you went too far this way, you were horror. If you went, and now it's more blended, and it's more, there's subgenres, there's more, things you can bend and play with a little bit. And as all of you have demonstrated, you all write differently within a fantasy scope of things. Are there certain things, though, that you hold true to, tried and true to the actual idea of fantasy to keep it fantasy for you? Or are you just, is it just that it just is happenstance and you want to write what you write, but then of course there is a little bit of just an idea that it is fantasy. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I mean, for what I do, my overarching thing is I want to tell an entertaining story. I want that bit of escapism. When I was young, I had bad things happen. Everybody has things that happen to them. And for me, reading was that true escapism. And so that's what I want. I want a hero's journey. I want the hero, while he might go through some horrible things, he's going to win in the end, mostly. I don't write tragedies here, so that's the thing that I want to stick with fantasy. Magic items, crazy beasts, and a hero that suffers as he goes. I mean, that seems to be the classic fantasy tropes, and I want to keep them.
But you also mentioned you're exploring whodunits and things like that. Is it?
Oh, but it's still woven. I work good. I'm an author. Woven through the arc. Because I'm doing Magic Academy.
Yeah.
And so for the first two books, he's learning. I mean, the main character Sean is trying to figure out how to do magic and how to overcome the challenges put for him, whether it's in the school or the bad guys trying to kill him. And so what I wanted to do is, I set it up in book one, is that somebody was actively trying to hose them over. And then in book two, who is it? They're going to figure out who is the agent provocateur. But at the same time, they're learning magic. So I still have that scope of magic. I still have the main arc. The whodunit is more the beeline.
Nice. How about for everybody else?
I'm definitely with Mark on how he said that whole escapism thing, because as a kid, I was always reading a new book, getting lost in the world of that book. And I've always wanted to bring the fantasy world into my world, which is, I think, why my books are a bit more urban fantasy, like they occur in the real world. So, like, I had one reviewer say, like, you don't know if, like, this person is actually sitting next to you, like, eating or something like that's in this book, like the characters and stuff, because the world is so realistic but not realistic.
Yeah. Ron, Melissa?
I think fantasy's like, it's like the pie crust, and you can fill it with whatever you want. So you can do so much with fantasy. I completely forgot what the question was, so I'm just gonna.
let me refine it for you. In your analogy of pie crust, do you want it to taste like fantasy, or do you want it to taste a little different but still remind people of fantasy?
Taste a little different, but still remind people it's still fantasy. Yeah. So I mean, you can do so much with it. So I mean, you just weave it as you will. Mm-hmm. And I don't really like to, I mean, I plot everything out as best I can, but characters will still take you other places. So I try to keep it as, I mean, it's all technically, I guess, fantasy if you consider, because it's all happening in my head. It's a fantasy. So, you know, I'm just recording it down on paper or computer.
Some of those we don't want to escape, though, right? We want to keep those in the head. But yeah, I'm just curious, though, is it important to have that fanatical element for you? Do you need that to complete the stories you're telling?
I think so. Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah. Because you don't want it to be too much like real life.
Yeah.
So you want to get away from that.
I agree with Melissa, not just because I'm afraid she might murder me, but because I want there to be the trappings of traditional fantasy, but then do whatever I want with them.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So, you know, I'll get to the clip here in a second, and I just want to preface and let everybody know, if you just joining us and haven't seen recently, my next episode, we're doing a double feature today, and literally about 15 minutes after this show ends, we'll be putting up the next show, which is our Origins show with Miss Kelly Blanchard. And for people who don't know who Kelly Blanchard is, she wrote the Chronicles of Lorik, and she's engaged right now into a series with her husband that she's co-writing, and so we talk a lot about that. But she wrote this epic 9-book series around one character and his journey, and obviously there's other characters and things involved. It's really interesting, and I'm always fascinated about the thing that comes up a lot for me when I'm talking about people who write series, and so that's what this clip is. And then I'm going to have the panel discuss what the question was to her, and then we'll wrap it up. So here's a little sneak preview.
See, he word good too.
Yeah, right. It's that damn authoring.
The thing I've always found fascinating about writing a series is the approach, because I'm a visual guy as well. I'm a filmmaker and I've done film, and I've also written novels. But the idea that you have one story to tell, and it has a beginning and a middle and an end, and then you leave just enough to get into a second book, to a third book, and so on. And so doing the little sprinklings that you did there, do you feel like, is that a nuance that you learned, or did you always have an idea of how you were going to begin and end every single book, and how, and what devices did you like to use? Are you a cliffhanger person? Are you somebody who likes to finish something and just start it at the end of the book for the next one? What is your approach to each book becoming into the next one?
Well, I don't typically do cliffhangers. I don't think I do, but some of my videos are like, why did you end it like that? I was like, what? It wasn't a cliffhanger. And they're like, I'm sorry, I thought it was done. So, but honestly, what happens is it's like an event. There's an event that needs to happen, and once that event is, because that event, if that event doesn't happen, the next event won't happen. And so the first book or so is like trying to get that event either resolved or figured out. And then once that event's done, it naturally leads into the next events. Like there's ramifications or consequences and so forth. It all to me makes lots of sense where it begins and ends, because it's just like those sections. Each scene has its own section. And there's no need to overlap things or to cut things off too short. If it's a cliffhanger, it's a cliffhanger. But I don't intentionally leave cliffhangers because I don't like that as a reader. So I don't like to do that to readers. I like to sometimes surprise them at the very end with something, and then it just takes them a bit to recover from that. I also have bonus scenes at the very end sometimes with my books, where if you read those, you will see the setup for the next book. You might not understand how it sets it up, but then once you get the next book, you read it like, oh, that's what that meant.
So there you go. Hope you guys all check that out afterwards. I'll be live in the chat if you want to hang out. It's a great episode. I'm real excited to finally put it out there. But I'm curious from everybody here how your approach to series are. Is it something that you had to learn? Is it something that you've always, Mark, you're a hardcore plotter. So did you have, the way you were going to go from book to book?
So yes and no. So when I met up with James Hunter, he's my publisher, Shadow Alley Press. I had this concept. I was like, I said, hey, look, here's this loaf of bread. This is what I want to do with the Silver Coin Saga, and what I don't know is how to slice this bread. And so we kind of talked through, did some negotiation, and what I thought was going to be book one. He's like, nah, there's too much there. Let's just expand that out to a trilogy for what you want to accomplish in book one, and then weave and so like Michael Anderle calls them open loops. You weave in these open concepts, like the Easter eggs that we were talking about earlier. So that way you say, I have something that I'm going to start at the beginning of book one, and it's not going to be resolved until the middle of book two. And you just start weaving those open loops in to kind of stitch together. Now I have an overarching story. It's plotted out to be an 11-book series, but think of it like a stairwell, right? You're gonna have a series of steps, and that gets you to the next landing. That's the end of book one, and then you get a turn, and now you're gonna go up the next steps to get to the next landing, which is the second floor, book two. And so I have milestones. I'm trying to be vague here because I don't want to give away the plot of the entire season or series, but the whole idea is that I have milestones. I have things that I want that character or set of characters to accomplish all the way until they finally go defeat the big baddie. Now it's going to take 11 books.
Nice. Now my question would be, to follow up on that, is Are there moments on the staircase where there's a crickety stair or somebody trips and there might be a cliffhanger? Yeah. Is that not?
Stairs are coated in olive oil. Yeah, you never know what happens in stairwells. They're kind of strange places. But every story. So this is my goal, and not everybody does this. Every story will be a complete story. Every book will be a complete story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. With an overarching, you're moving up the next staircase towards the final goal.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. No cliffhangers.
Nice. How about for everybody else? How do you approach the series aspect of it?
I have cliffhangers.
I do too.
Yeah, I have a lot. But I think it's because I'm Gen X, so a lot of the stuff that I grew up with, everything ended on a cliffhanger. And I'm just one of those people, if they, like, even in my chapters, every chapter ends on a cliffhanger. So you're not putting it down. You're going to keep going. You're going to be reading while you're peeing. Okay. So that's how that's going to be. But I mean, it's just, I like cliffhangers when I read stuff too, because it keeps me interested. It keeps me wanting to read more.
Now,
So,
my follow up is there? Do you know, because you're doing cliffhangers? Do you know where it's going to finally stop cliffhanging? Do you know when it's going to end, or are you keen on just keeping it going until you feel like you just feel it out? Is it at the process, or do you know exactly?
oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably bad to end it on a cliffhanger, right? You don't want to end the series on a cliffhanger.
The series itself won't end on a cliffhanger, but
Yeah.
every book, well, the series will be complete, and everybody will go at the end. But all the books in between will have cliffhangers.
Interesting. How about for you, Madeline? You were saying you do the same kind of?
Yeah, I have. I mean, mine aren't all like super intense cliffhangers. There's one that is, and I'm not going to say what it is because it's a huge spoiler for the series.
You wanted to, though. I was seeing it in your eyes.
I'm like, don't say it. But it's a huge, huge part of like the series, and I think it is the end of book 2 with that big one. But there's also like some, they're not huge, they're smaller cliffhangers. Like book 3 ends with more of a surprise kind of cliffhanger than like oh my gosh, this person is MIA kind of thing. So, or dead or anything like that. So, but the series, like Melissa said, it is not going to end on it's probably not going to end on a cliffhanger.
Did you know when you were going to end it, though? Did you have an idea?
They kind of just fell naturally. When I planned it out originally, everything was supposed to be like a trilogy, but it kind of expanded because the characters decided, nope, we're not ending here. And another bad villain character showed up in correlation to the earlier on villain. And I was like, well, we can't just leave him hanging around. Like, if we're going to bring up this, we got to address this. And it's, yeah, so.
How about for you, Ron? What is your approach to going from book to book?
Well, originally, I conceived the series as a trilogy, but I love the character Dirk so much that I keep coming up with more books, and then I'm also doing an anthology in that world. But so it's kind of weird. The future books will be more standalone. The trilogy has a very definite ending with no cliffhanger, and I don't purposefully write any cliffhangers. I try to make each chapter and each book as boring as possible, so the readers have to prove they love what I'm doing, even though it's awful. They're all a test. So a little different than the rest of you guys, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. I like that idea.
That's not really what I do.
Dedicated they really are, right? If you're really good at
really, yeah, that's not true. I was lying. I do try to make the books entertain. Whew, that was close. My internet didn't cut out right then.
I was gonna say you got to be dedicated to Mr. Lahr's vision if you're going to continue. Be strong. Go for it.
Yeah. My audience is really depressed people.
Well, they say the darkest corners are where you find the most humor. So but the other thing that's interesting that we've kind of touched on it a little bit here, and I kind of want to end on this note a little bit. The idea, and I actually addressed this with Kelly too, because her whole entire series is based around this one character's journey, and it's again, it goes into other characters, and we talk about how the other characters get involved and what that means to how she writes in the future, because it does matter. But it starts with the one character and builds, and the character dictates a lot of what you're going to do, as we've all demonstrated here and talked about. But in creating the scope that you've created, the world that you've devised, the sequels and the series that you've written through, other characters start to rear their head. Audiences start to talk about other characters. And is that kind of, do you kind of feel like at the end of your series, I just want to move on and do something different? Are you open to the idea of exploring other characters and other avenues? Are there tree branches that you kind of like, that kind of sprout? And are you somebody who would embrace that and keep in this world, even though it might keep you there for the rest of your life? You know,
Yes.
like you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some
I
of it-
actually have like 2 books planned out that are spinoff of like characters that are not so main characters on my series, which I can actually give you the name of. I've started writing it, but it's not my main focus right now. Tally and Agatha. They are 2 characters that I'm writing their kind of like their romance story and how it spins off, because Tally goes through a huge like change after she finds out Liz is her sister, and which is the main character of my series. And it just, I give her perspective of everything she goes through internally, mentally, and like everything kind of like, it's different than what Liz faces, because Tally grew up knowing about everything. So
Interesting.
That's the same with my trilogy. There's a spinoff to it with some characters. Some when it was first brought out 10 years ago, there was a bunch of characters that everybody really liked and wanted a continuation with. So there is a spinoff of several of those after this trilogy ends.
Nice.
I hope to do that. You know, I have several novels and even trilogies planned with other characters and in different time periods, because my main trilogy happens 400 years after a big thing, and I want to go back to the time period of when the big thing was happening.
Kind of more cover that timeline that you were talking about earlier, right? Where you created.
Whether people read it or not, I'm doing it.
Nice.
You should.
Go for it.
yes, please do, because I want to read it.
I'll take it. I just need to charge like 10 grand per copy.
Oh.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be worth it.
Fans will pay it. You know. How about for you, Mark?
So I structured the Silver Coin Saga with a cast of characters, an ensemble. So the main character, Sean, I mean, he has supporting characters, and so I've already planned in that each one of those characters will explore their own arc, because it's not just about his journey, it's their journey as they try to solve the problem that started 400 years ago, coincidentally, Ron.
Oh my.
Damn it.
Wow.
Damn
it. Now Ron has to start his 401 years.
Yeah. 401 and a half years.
Yeah. 400. Mine was at daylight, and Mark's is at sunset, right? So.
This happened first.
Get out of my head, witch.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful season, and really appreciate everybody coming by and hanging out. And we've had a wonderful time, and all these folks have been here a few times now, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys indulging me and talking about fantasy, because I am a novice and I am very interested in exploring this part of my brain that I haven't before. So I really, most of these questions were me trying to figure things out. So you guys helped me out today. So I really appreciate it.
Well, we all learn. I mean, every time absolutely. I'm with you, Joe, I'm learning.
So that being said, let's go around the horn and tell everybody where they can catch you at. And we'll start from the opposite end this time. So Melissa, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram. Well, just go to www.melissawilliscell.com and every link I have is there.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Mark, how about for yourself?
So you can find me on the website at markstallings.com. I'm also on Facebook and Patreon.
All right, Madeline?
Go to my website, www.thechaptergoddess.com, and it'll give you the links to all of my social media. I have quite a few, so follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Nice, awesome. All right, Mr. Lahr.
Well, for people who aren't so smart, I put my website in my name. So right now it says that is not my name. My name is not woo 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 Cathaldi. That is my website. Please go there. I recommend that you sign up for my newsletter because obviously it's hilarious.
And you have two now, right? So you have the funny one and a different one. Is it?
I have the one funny one and then the other funny one. No, I have the fantasy-focused funny one and then the new one, which hasn't quite premiered yet. But
all right, nice, awesome. Well, everybody go check that out. And I am Joe Compton, and this is GoIndieNow. Congratulations, you found us. Good job. I'm the season finale, so great. You're gonna wonder. You're gonna come here next Sunday and wonder where are we. Well, don't worry about it. We will be back. We are taking a short little hiatus and a much-needed break, and we're still going to have programming throughout the month of August. Don't get me wrong. You'll be able to see a lot of the things that we're still doing and preparing for. We've got a great season ahead. In the fall, we've got more shows coming out, and one right after this, literally right after this, with our Origins episode with Miss Kelly Blanchard. Definitely check that out because she's an amazing person in the indie community, and we talk a lot about her writing and her writing style. So I think you'll all find that very interesting. I know I did, and I've found this season to be interesting, and the people who all volunteered their time to come here and hang out with me for an hour, I really appreciate it. And everybody out there in the audience who've asked great questions, made great comments, thank you so much for that. And while you're here, hit that little, smash that little like button there, and subscribe and comment some more. And just because we won't be back next Sunday doesn't mean that it's not always time to go indie now, because it is always time to go indie now. And with that, we will say goodbye and bid you adieu, and see you on the other side, everybody.